They say every city has its ghost stories. Taxi drivers know 'em best. The fare who vanishes before paying. The address that leads nowhere. The passenger who shouldn't exist. I'm Michael Chen, and I've been driving Uber for 3 years, mostly night shifts, when the city transforms into something else entirely. I've heard all the urban legends, laughed at every supernatural tale over late-night coffee with other drivers, but that was before R. Collins. Before the night my GPS told me my passenger was still in my car, even though the back seat was empty. Some truths, I've learned, refuse to stay buried.
Quick pause. Before we continue, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? If you're enjoying these stories, make sure to hit subscribe, because tomorrow's episode is absolutely mind-blowing. The digital clock on my dashboard blinked 11:47 p.m. as I cruised down Morrison Avenue, the city's main artery now reduced to occasional headlights and the amber glow of street lamps. This was my territory, the hours between midnight and dawn, when most people are safely tucked in their beds, and the city belongs to people like me, night workers, insomniacs, those running from or towards something they can't name. I've been driving for Uber for 3 years now, ever since the marketing firm I worked for decided my position was redundant. Funny how quickly a career can evaporate, how a decade of loyalty means nothing when spreadsheets need balancing. Sarah, my wife, had been supportive at first. "Take your time," she'd said. "Find something better." But temporary became permanent, and somewhere along the way she stopped believing I was looking for something better. She stopped believing in a lot of things. The divorce papers came 6 months ago. Now it was just me, my 2019 Honda Accord, and the endless parade of drunk college students, airport runs, and late-night hospital visits that made up the graveyard shift economy. I'd become intimately familiar with the city's nocturnal rhythms, the ebb and flow of bar crowds, the 2 a.m. diner rush, the lonely souls who needed to go somewhere, anywhere, at hours when most of the world slept. Michael's mobile therapy, I'd joke with regular passengers. Because that's what the job became after a while. Not just driving, but listening. People tell their Uber driver things they'd never tell their therapist. Maybe it's the anonymity, the darkness, the knowledge that once they step out of the car, they'll probably never see you again. I'd heard confessions of affairs, business failures, family betrayals, and desperate plans. The backseat of my car had witnessed more human drama than most psychiatrists' offices. But with the stories came the legends. Every driver had their repertoire of strange tales, and we'd swap them during the slow hours, parked outside 24-hour gas stations, sipping burnt coffee and killing time between pings. There was Marcus, who swore he picked up a woman in a wedding dress at 3 a.m., driven her to a cemetery and watched her walk straight through the locked gates. There was Diane, who claimed she'd driven a businessman to an office building that had been demolished 5 years earlier. She'd even checked the address afterward, found nothing but an empty lot and a historical marker. And then there was the most persistent legend of all, the ghost passengers of Grand Hill Hotel. Grand Hill Hotel had been one of the city's premier destinations once, a towering Art Deco masterpiece built in the 1920s, all brass fixtures and crystal chandeliers, the kind of place where Hollywood stars stayed when they were in town. But that was before the fire. 3 years ago, an electrical fault in the old wiring had turned the building into an inferno. 15 people died, including staff and guests. The building still stood, a charred skeleton waiting for developers who would never come, the property tied up in lawsuits and insurance battles, haunted by more than just memories. The drivers claimed that sometimes, late at night, ride requests would come from Grand Hill Hotel. When drivers arrived, they'd find someone waiting, pale, quiet, always requesting a ride to somewhere specific. The trip would feel wrong somehow, cold, silent. And when they arrived at the destination, the passenger would be gone, just vanished from the back seat. I'd heard the story a dozen times, in a dozen variations. Marcus said his buddy Dave had experienced it. Diane knew someone who knew someone. But no one I actually trusted had ever confirmed it. Urban legend, I figured. The kind of story that grows in the telling, fed by late-night exhaustion and the human need for mystery in an increasingly explicable world. My phone chimed, the Uber ping that meant work, money, distraction from thoughts that spiraled too easily into dark places when left unattended. I glanced at the screen. Pickup location, Grand Hill Hotel. Passenger name, R. Collins. Destination, City General. I felt a cold ripple down my spine. Grand Hill Hotel. Of course. I almost declined the ride. My finger hovered over the cancel button, but rent was due in 5 days, and I was $40 short of what I needed. Besides, this was ridiculous. The hotel was condemned, sure, but that didn't mean people couldn't be nearby. Maybe someone was at one of the neighboring buildings. Maybe they dropped a pin at the wrong spot. These things happen all the time. I accepted the ride. The GPS directed me east toward the warehouse district where Grand Hill Hotel loomed like a tombstone over the surrounding buildings. The streets grew emptier as I drove, the few cars I'd shared the road with peeling off toward residential neighborhoods and highway on-ramps. Soon it was just me, my headlights cutting through the darkness, the radio playing soft jazz to fill the silence. Grand Hill Hotel appeared gradually, first as a dark shape blocking out stars, then as a detailed structure of broken windows and charred fire walls. Someone had fenced it off with China Clint and posted no trespassing signs every 10 feet, but that hadn't stopped urban explorers and homeless encampments. I'd read about the occasional police sweep, authorities trying to keep people out of the dangerous, unstable structure. I pulled up to the main entrance, or what had been the main entrance. The grand awning that had once sheltered arriving guests now hung in twisted metal strips. The brass doors were chained shut, covered in graffiti and rust. The fountain in the circular drive had been drained, filled now with trash and dead leaves. My phone showed the passenger was nearby, less than 50 feet. But I saw no one. The street was utterly empty. Just pools of light under street lamps and the deep shadows between them. I waited. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes. This was becoming a waste of time. I was about to cancel the ride and report a no-show when I saw movement in my rearview mirror. Someone was approaching from behind my car, walking slowly but determinedly. A man, medium height, wearing what looked like a dark suit. As he moved through the alternating light and shadow, I caught glimpses of his features. Pale skin, dark hair. Something wrong about his proportions, though I couldn't identify exactly what. He reached for the rear passenger door handle, and I hit the button to unlock it. The door opened. He slid inside, and with the interior light that briefly illuminated the car, I got my first clear look at R. Collins. He was maybe 50, with graying hair slicked back from a high forehead. His suit was expensive but rumpled, his tie loosened. His skin had an odd waxen quality, like someone who'd been ill for a long time. But it was his eyes that caught my attention. Dark, intense, carrying the weight of someone who'd seen too much. And there, on his neck, just above his collar, was a scar. A deep, ugly scar that looked like it had been there for years, though poorly healed. "City General Hospital," he said quietly. His voice had a strange quality, almost like it was coming from slightly the wrong direction. "That's right," I confirmed, pulling away from the curb. "Emergency room entrance or main entrance?" "Emergency. Please, hurry." The GPS showed 18 minutes to destination. In the rearview mirror, I could see R. Collins staring out the window at the passing city, his face expressionless. I didn't know it then, but those 18 minutes would unravel everything I thought I knew about life, death, and the spaces in between.
The first sign that something was wrong came 3 minutes into the drive. I'd taken the usual route towards City General, north on Chambers Street, then east on the interstate bypass,
Traffic was light, just a handful of trucks making late deliveries and the occasional sedan heading home from a night shift. The radio was playing something soft and instrumental, and our Collins sat in the back seat, silent and still. Too still, I realized. Most passengers fidget. They check their phones, adjust their seatbelts, look around. But our Collins hadn't moved since settling into the seat. He just stared out the window with that unchanging expression, like he was watching a movie he'd seen before. Then my phone started acting up. The GPS flickered, and for a moment showed my car in a completely different location, back at Grand Hill Hotel. Then it corrected itself, placing me back on the interstate. A moment later, it flickered again, and this time it showed two dots, my car and another dot right on top of it, as if there were two vehicles in the exact same location. I tapped the screen, thinking it was a glitch. The app reloaded, but the duplicate dot remained, one labeled you and another labeled passenger. That was odd. The app sometimes showed the passenger's location when they initially requested the ride, but not during the trip itself, and certainly not overlapping with my own position. "Everything all right?" R. Collins asked from the back seat. I glanced in the rearview mirror. He was looking at me now, those intense eyes focused on my reflection. "Yeah, just a GPS glitch," I said, forcing a casual tone. "Probably just the app updating. It happens sometimes." He nodded slowly, but didn't look away. "Technology," he said. "It sees things we don't want it to see. Shows us truths we're not ready for." It was an odd thing to say, but I'd heard stranger from passengers. People at odd hours are often philosophical, working through their thoughts aloud, treating the driver as a confessional booth with wheels. "Heading to the hospital for an emergency?" I asked, partly to be polite, partly to fill the unnerving silence. "You could say that," R. Collins replied. "There's something I need to deliver, something that can't wait any longer." I waited for him to elaborate, but he fell silent again, returning his gaze to the window. The city scrolled past, darkened storefronts, all-night laundromats, the glowing signs of 24-hour diners. Normal. Ordinary. But inside the car, the temperature seemed to have dropped several degrees. I checked the climate control. It was set to 72, but my breath was nearly fogging. The GPS flickered again. This time, when it reloaded, it showed my destination had changed. Instead of City General Hospital, it now read Grand Hill Hotel, room 304. My heart rate spiked. I definitely hadn't changed the destination. I tapped the screen again, trying to reload the original route. The app froze for a moment, then crashed completely, leaving my phone screen black. No, I muttered, trying to restart the app. The Uber app was my lifeline. Without it, I couldn't complete trips, couldn't get paid, couldn't work. "Michael," R. Collins said from the back seat. I froze. He hadn't told me my name. It was policy not to unless asked, and he definitely hadn't asked. "How do you—" "You need to listen to me," he continued, his voice urgent now, losing that distant quality it had before. "What I'm about to tell you will sound impossible. You'll want to dismiss it, rationalize it, explain it away. But you need to listen. Your life may depend on it." I met his eyes in the rearview mirror. In the passing streetlights, his face seemed to flicker, as though I was seeing two versions of him superimposed, the businessman in the suit and something else beneath. Something wrong. "The fire at Grand Hill Hotel, 3 years ago. You've heard about it." "Everyone has," I managed to say. My mouth felt dry. 15 people died that night. The official investigation concluded it was an electrical fault, old wiring in an old building, a tragic accident. But it wasn't an accident, Michael. It was murder. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. This was insane. I was trapped in a car with a crazy person. But even as I thought it, I knew it wasn't quite right. Something deeper was wrong here, something that went beyond a disturbed passenger. The hotel's owner, Richard Castellano, had been losing money for years. The Grand Hill was expensive to maintain, and newer hotels were taking all the business. He was underwater on mortgages, facing bankruptcy. So he made a choice. He hired someone to start a fire. Small, contained, enough for an insurance payout. It was supposed to happen on a Tuesday night when the hotel is nearly empty. But the arsonist got greedy. He wanted more money, threatened to go to the police. So Castellano moved the timeline up. Started the fire on a Friday night when the hotel was fully booked. I started. But our Collins kept talking, his voice coming faster now, more desperate. I was staying in room 304. I was there for business. I'm a financial auditor, was reviewing the books for a consulting firm. I'd found irregularities in Castellano's accounts earlier that day, evidence of fraud. I'd planned to report it the next morning, but I never got the chance. The fire started just after midnight. The alarm clocks had been disabled in my section of the building. By the time I smelled smoke, the hallway was already impassable. I tried the window, but we were on the third floor, too high to jump. I tried to breathe through a wet towel, tried to stay low, but the smoke... God, the smoke! He trailed off, and in the mirror, I saw him touch the scar on his neck. No, touch. His fingers passed through it, as though the scar, his neck, his entire body were less than solid. I died in that room, Michael. Smoke inhalation, the coroner's report said. They found my body near the door, phone still in my hand, still trying to call 911 even as I was dying. The car felt like it was spinning even though I was driving perfectly straight. This couldn't be real. It was a prank, or I was having some kind of breakdown, or... You're not going crazy, Art Collins said, as if reading my thoughts. You're just seeing what's really there. I've been trying to get someone to listen for 3 years. I've called rides, appeared to drivers, tried to tell them what happened, but they all dismissed it, thought they were hallucinating or that I was just a crazy passenger with conspiracy theories. But you're different, Michael. You've lost things. You understand that the world isn't always what we want it to be. He was talking about Sarah, about my job, about all the ways my life had fallen apart. But how could he know? The truth is in room 304. I left evidence, documents proving Castellano's fraud, proof he hired the arsonist. But no one's ever found them because no one's ever looked in the right place. The investigation focused on the electrical system, never considered arson, never examined Castellano's finances thoroughly. He collected his insurance money, $20 million, and disappeared, probably living on a beach somewhere while 15 people are dead and forgotten. Even if this is true, I said, my voice shaking, what am I supposed to do about it? I'm an Uber driver, not a detective or a journalist. I can't just break into a condemned building and search for evidence. You won't have to break in, R. Collins said. I can show you the way. But you have to choose to see the truth, Michael. You have to choose to believe that some things matter more than playing it safe, more than avoiding risk. You lost your career because you followed rules that didn't protect you. You lost your marriage because you stopped fighting for what mattered. Don't lose this too. His words hit like physical blows. But before I could respond, something even stranger happened. The traffic lights ahead of us, all of them in a row, stretching 6 blocks, turned red simultaneously. Not the normal cascading pattern, but all at once, as if the city itself was trying to stop us. And in the back seat, R. Collins began to fade. Not slowly, but impulses, like a light bulb dying. Solid, then translucent, then solid again. We're running out of time, he said, his voice becoming distant, echoing. Every moment you choose not to believe, I fade a little more.
The universe only keeps channels open for so long. You have to decide, Michael, now. Will you help me deliver the truth? I sat at a red light that shouldn't have been red, with a passenger who couldn't exist, being asked to believe in the impossible. And the crazy thing, the absolutely insane thing, part of me was ready to say yes.
Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time. So if you're enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
I made an illegal U-turn. The tire squealed as I spun the wheel, cutting across empty lanes, heading back the way we'd come, back toward Grand Hill Hotel, back toward something my rational mind screamed was impossible, but something deeper, something that had been dormant for years, recognized as necessary. "You're making the right choice," R. Collins said from the back seat. He was more solid now, more present, as if my decision had anchored him more firmly to reality, or pulled me deeper into his unreality. I wasn't sure which, and I was no longer certain it mattered. My phone suddenly lit up, the Uber app springing back to life. But instead of showing the route to City General Hospital, it displayed a message. "New destination, Grand Hill Hotel, room 304. Passenger will guide you." "That's not possible," I whispered. "The app doesn't work like that." "Technology is just a tool," R. Collins said, "and right now, it's being used by forces that understand reality works differently than you were taught, Michael. The universe isn't as rigid as you think. It's more like a story, and stories have rules, but also flexibility. They respond to will, intention, belief." We drove in silence for several minutes, the city passing by in reverse. It felt like we were going backwards in time as well as space, returning to some crucial moment where everything could still be changed. The streets that had seemed so normal on the drive out now felt different, charged with potential or dread. I couldn't tell which. I said, needing to break the silence, needing to ground myself in conversation, in questions and answers, in the familiar patterns of human interaction. "If you've been trying to reach people for 3 years, why now? Why me? Why tonight?" "Anniversaries have power," R. Collins replied. 3 years ago tonight, the fire started at 11:47 p.m. We're approaching that exact moment. The barrier between what was and what is becomes thin. Memory and reality overlap. It's the only time I can manifest fully enough to make this journey. And as for why you, that's the wrong question. The question is, why you're willing to listen when others weren't. So what? This is some kind of ghost story where I'm the chosen one? "No," R. Collins said, and there was something like sadness in his voice. "You're not chosen. You're just willing. That's all it ever takes, Michael. The universe doesn't select special people for special tasks. It just watches to see who steps forward when the moment comes." We pulled up to Grand Hill Hotel again, completing a circle. The building looked even more ominous now, knowing what I knew, or what I thought I knew, or what I'd convinced myself to believe for reasons I didn't fully understand. The chain-link fence still surrounded it. The no trespassing signs still warned away intruders, but now they felt less like warnings and more like challenges. "There's a section of fence on the east side," R. Collins said. "Someone cut through it months ago. Security doesn't patrol regularly anymore. There's no budget for it. We can get in through the service entrance." I parked a block away, in the shadows between streetlights. For a moment, I just sat there, hands on the wheel, staring at the hotel. This was insane. I could still turn around, drive away, forget this night ever happened, get back to my normal routine of drunk passengers and airport runs and slowly grinding away at the debt and disappointment that was my life. But R. Collins was right about one thing. I'd stopped fighting for anything. I'd let my career go without a real battle. I'd let my marriage dissolve without finding a way to save it. I'd retreated from life into the safety of routine, of not trying, of not risking anything, because risk meant possible failure, and I'd had enough failure to last several lifetimes. "What happens after?" I asked. "Say we get in, find this evidence. What then?" Then you deliver it. To the police, to the media, to anyone who will listen. You make sure the truth gets out. That Richard Castellano pays for what he did. That the 15 people who died that night get justice. And you? I move on, he said simply. Once the truth is delivered, I'll be free. That's how it works for spirits like me. We're anchored by unfinished business, by wrongs that need righting. Fix the wrong, and we can let go. I turned to look at him directly, not through the mirror, but actually twisting in my seat to face the back. He was clearer now than he'd been all night, almost solid, almost alive. But there was still that flickering quality, that sense of something not quite fully present. You know I can't actually see you, don't you? I said. Not really. My brain is just filling in details, interpreting whatever's actually there in a way I can process. You might not look anything like this. R. Collins smiled, the first smile I'd seen from him. Does it matter what I look like as long as you understand what I'm saying, Michael? Truth doesn't require perfect clarity. It just requires willingness to see. We got out of the car. The night air was cold, much colder than it should have been for early autumn. Our breath, my breath at least, misted in the air. R. Collins walked beside me, his footsteps making no sound, while mine echoed off the empty buildings around us. The chain link cut was exactly where he'd said it would be, a gap in the chain link just wide enough to slip through. Beyond it, the grounds of Grand Hill Hotel stretched out like a battlefield frozen in time. Debris everywhere, fallen bricks, charred wood, broken glass catching the moonlight. The smell of old smoke still lingered in the air, or maybe I was imagining it, my brain supplying expected details. The service entrance was a heavy metal door, rusted but intact. R. Collins walked straight through it. I stared at the door, then at the space where he'd disappeared. "That's not helpful," I called out softly. "I can't do that." The door swung open from the inside, seemingly by itself. R. Collins's voice came from the darkness beyond. "Sorry, forgot about physical limitations. Come on." I stepped inside, into absolute darkness. My phone's flashlight beam cut through it, revealing a concrete corridor lined with pipes and electrical conduits, many of them hanging loose from the ceiling. Everything was covered in a layer of soot and ash. The floor was slick with standing water from some leak or another. "This way," R. Collins said, moving ahead of me. I could just barely see him in the darkness, a shape that seemed to generate its own faint luminescence. We moved through the service areas, past industrial kitchens with their equipment still in place, through storage rooms filled with moldering linens and supplies. Everything was frozen as it had been the night of the fire. Evacuated in panic, never returned to, left to rot in the silence. "The stairwell is ahead," R. Collins said. "The main stairs are unstable, but the service stairs should still hold." "Should?" I repeated. "He hasn't had to test them with actual weight in 3 years," he pointed out. The service stairwell was narrow, claustrophobic, each step making ominous creaking sounds under my feet. I climbed slowly, testing each step, my phone's flashlight beam bouncing wildly. R. Collins drifted beside me, his form sometimes passing through the railing or the wall, constant reminders that he wasn't bound by the same physical rules I was. Ground floor, second floor, third floor. The door to the third floor hallway was warped but openable. Beyond it stretched the hotel's guest corridor, and here the damage was much worse. The ceiling had partially collapsed in places, doors hung open or had burned away entirely. The carpet was a sodden mess of water damage and char. And the smell, God, the smell was overwhelming. Smoke and decay, and something else. Something that made my hindbrain want to flee. "Room 304 is at the end," R. Collins said. His voice had changed, becoming softer, more fragile. It's hard being back here, remembering, knowing how it ends." We walked the hallway together, past rooms where people had slept and dreamed and gone about their lives, never knowing they were spending their final night on Earth. Past 301, 302, 303, and finally to 304. The door was closed but not locked. The electronic lock had failed in the fire. I pushed it open and the hinges shrieked in protest. Inside, room 304 was a tomb. The bed was a skeletal frame, the mattress burned away. The curtains were gone, leaving just the twisted curtain rods. The television had melted into an abstract sculpture. Everything was covered in that same layer of soot and ash. "Where?" I asked. R. Collins pointed to the desk against the far wall. "I was trying to hide the documents when I realized the fire was too close. I put them in the one place I thought might survive. The mini-fridge." I crossed to where the small refrigerator sat, still plugged in, still humming faintly. The fire had scorched its exterior, but it was largely intact. The insulation had protected it somewhat. I pulled open the door. Inside, beneath some melted ice that had long since turned to stagnant water, was a waterproof document sleeve. I pulled it out, hands shaking. The documents inside were wet but readable. Financial statements, email printouts, bank records, contracts. And there near the bottom, a contract between Richard Castellano and a man named Marcus Hewitt, outlining a payment of $50,000 for property maintenance services, dated 2 days before the fire. "That's him," R. Collins said, looking over my shoulder. "Marcus Hewitt, the arsonist." He was supposed to start a small fire in the basement, make it look electrical. But Castellano double-crossed him, didn't pay the full amount, so Hewitt started the fire on a busy night instead, as revenge. Neither of them cared about the lives they were gambling with. I stared at the documents, at the proof that 15 murders had been dismissed as an accident, that a man had profited from mass killing and never faced consequences. "We need to go," I said, tucking the documents into my jacket, before a sound from the hallway cut me off. Footsteps. Real, physical footsteps, not the silent drifting of a ghost. R. Collins's eyes widened. "That's not possible. No one should be here. No one alive knows what we're doing." The footsteps stopped outside room 304. A shadow fell across the doorway. A man stepped into view, backlit by a flashlight beam. He was in his 60s, well-dressed, even in casual clothes, with the kind of deep tan that came from years in tropical climates. He was pointing a gun at me. "Hello, Michael. I'm afraid you found something that needs to stay lost." Standing in a burned-out hotel room, holding evidence of murder, staring at a man who should have been hundreds of miles away, I realized the ghost beside me wasn't the strangest impossibility of this night. The strangest thing was that Richard Castellano had somehow known we'd be here.
Time seemed to stop. Or maybe my brain was just processing too many impossibilities at once. Richard Castellano stood in the doorway of room 304, his gun steady, his eyes cold and calculating. Behind me, R. Collins had gone completely silent. "You're supposed to be in the Cayman Islands," I said, my voice surprisingly steady despite the terror flooding my system. "That's what all the articles said. They took the insurance money and disappeared offshore." Castellano smiled, the expression not reaching his eyes. That's what I wanted people to think, but I never left. Why would I? I got away with the perfect crime. The investigation concluded it was an accident. The insurance paid out. No charges filed, no suspicion. All I had to do was lay low, let a year or two pass, and then I could resurface with a new business venture. A comfortable retirement funded by very tragic circumstances. "You murdered 15 people," I said. "I started a fire that unfortunately spread more than anticipated," he corrected, as if the distinction mattered. "Semantics, perhaps, but important ones legally. And it's not like I can be tried for it anyway. Double jeopardy. I was investigated, cleared, and can't be charged again for the same crime." "That's not how double jeopardy works," I said. "You were never charged in the first place." Details. The point is, I've rebuilt my life very carefully over the past 3 years. New name, new identity, but quietly monitoring anything related to the hotel. I have alerts set up, contacts in the police department, ways of knowing if anyone starts asking uncomfortable questions. And tonight, those systems alerted me that something strange was happening. Uber rides requested from a condemned building. A driver who accepted the ride instead of canceling it like everyone else does. That got my attention. My mind was racing. "You've been monitoring Uber rides? That's insane." It's thorough, Castellano corrected, because I knew that Collins was still here. I could feel it, and that way you sometimes know things without knowing how you know them. I knew his spirit or essence or whatever you want to call it hadn't moved on, and I knew that eventually, on some anniversary with the right circumstances, he might find a way to bring someone back here. I glanced at R. Collins. He was staring at Castellano with an expression of pure hatred, his form flickering rapidly between solid and transparent. "He can hear you, can't he?" Castellano said, following my gaze. "Collins, can you hear me? God, I hope you can. I hope you've spent 3 years trapped here, aware of everything, unable to do anything about it. That's so much better than just ceasing to exist. That's real punishment." "You're a monster," I said. "I'm a businessman who made a hard decision. You wouldn't understand. You're a failure, Michael. You lost your job, your wife, your entire life fell apart. You couldn't make the hard choices when they mattered. That's why you're driving an Uber at midnight instead of living the life you thought you'd have. Successful people, people like me, we do what needs to be done." Something in his words sparked recognition. "How do you know about my job, my wife?" Castellano smiled again. "I've been following your GPS for the past hour. I know exactly who you are, Michael Chen, former marketing analyst at Brenner & Associates, divorced 6 months ago, living in a studio apartment in the Riverside district, $37,000 in debt, no real prospects. You are nobody, a ghost yourself in your way, which makes you perfect." "Perfect for what?" "To disappear," Castellano said simply. "You accepted a ride from a condemned building. You came here alone in the middle of the night. Your car is parked a block away with no witnesses. When you go missing, the police will assume you were robbed, or that you fell through unstable flooring, or any number of tragic accidents that happen to people who go places they shouldn't. Another body in another abandoned building. The city has dozens of them." He was going to kill me. The realization hit with crystal clarity. This wasn't a threat or a bluff. Richard Castellano had murdered 15 people and gotten away with it. One more body wouldn't trouble his conscience because he clearly didn't have one. "The documents," I said, playing for time, trying to think of anything that might save me. "I already uploaded them to the cloud. If I disappear, they'll automatically be sent to the police, the media, everyone." "No, you didn't. You've had those documents maybe 3 minutes. You barely had time to look at them, let alone upload them anywhere. And even if you had, I can see your phone from here. It has no signal. This building is a dead zone. Nothing gets in or out wirelessly." He was right. I glanced at my phone. No bars, no signal, no hope of calling for help. "So here's what's going to happen," Castellano continued, taking a step into the room. "You're going to give me those documents. Then you're going to have a very unfortunate accident. The floor in this room is compromised. I can see the stress fractures from here. One good push, and you'll go straight through to the floor below. Tragic, terrible, but entirely your own fault for trespassing in a condemned building." "Michael," R. Collins said suddenly, his voice urgent, "look at me." I turned my head slightly, keeping Castellano in my peripheral vision. R. Collins had become almost completely transparent, like he was fading from existence. "I need you to trust me. I need you to believe in me with everything you have. Belief has power here, in this place, on this night. The stronger your belief, the more real I become. Do you understand?" I didn't really, but I nodded anyway. "Good," R. Collins said. "Now, when I tell you to, I need you to run. Don't think, don't hesitate, just run. Head for the window." "The window?" I hissed. "We're on the 3rd floor." "Trust me," he repeated. Castellano was advancing now, gun trained on my chest, his other hand extended for the documents. "Come on, Michael. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. You're going to die either way. At least make it quick." "Now!" R. Collins shouted. And then several things happened simultaneously. R. Collins surged forward, his ghostly form suddenly blazing with light, becoming more solid than I had ever seen him. He slammed into Castellano, and impossibly, physically, the collision had impact. Castellano staggered backward, surprise registering on his face. I ran. Not toward the door. Castellano was blocking that route, but toward the window, just as R. Collins had told me. The glass was long since shattered, leaving just the frame and a 3-story drop to the debris-strewn ground below. Behind me, I heard Castellano shout, heard the gun discharge once, twice, the reports deafeningly loud in the enclosed space. I didn't know if he was shooting at me or at our Collins, and I didn't stop to find out. I reached the window, and in that split second before I jumped, I saw it.
Below the window, maybe 6 feet down, was the old awning, the one that had partially collapsed but still clung to the building's side. Its metal frame was twisted, but the heavy canvas top was still mostly intact, sagging but present. I jumped. Time stretched. I felt the cold air rush past me, saw the ground approaching, and then I hit the awning. The canvas caught me, sagged under my weight, and I slid down its angled surface like a nightmarish playground slide, finally tumbling off the end to land hard on the pavement 10 feet below. Pain shot through my shoulder and hip where I'd hit the ground, but nothing felt broken. I scrambled to my feet, looking up at the window I'd just jumped from. Castellano was there, leaning out, gun aimed at me. But beside him, barely visible in the darkness, was R. Collins, his hand on Castellano's wrist, pushing the gun upward. The next shot went wild, shattering what remained of a fourth-floor window. "Run!" R. Collins's voice echoed down to me, already sounding distant. "Deliver the truth!" I ran. Through the hotel grounds, through the gap in the fence, back to my car. My hand shook so badly I could barely get the key in the ignition. Behind me I could see flashlight beams moving in the hotel, heard shouting. Castellano was coming. The engine caught. I threw the car into gear and peeled out, tires squealing, not caring about stealth or subtlety anymore, just needing to get away, to get somewhere with lights and people and witnesses. I drove for 10 minutes before I felt safe enough to slow down, to check my mirrors to confirm I wasn't being followed. My heart was hammering, my breath coming in ragged gasps, the document still clutched against my chest under my jacket. I had escaped. Barely, impossibly, but I had escaped. And R. Collins had saved me. A ghost, a spirit, an impossibility made possible by belief and will and the thin places where reality bends, had physically fought a living man to give me time to escape. I had felt his presence, seen him manifest with enough solidity to push, to impact, to matter. My phone suddenly chimed, making me jump. Signal had returned, and with it came a notification from the Uber app, trip completed, passenger rating, 5 stars, comment, thank you for believing, deliver the truth. I pulled into a 24-hour diner parking lot, one of those bright fluorescent-lit havens that exist outside of normal time. Inside, through the windows, I could see a few scattered customers, a couple of truckers, a tired waitress refilling coffee, the ordinary world continuing as if nothing extraordinary had happened. But something extraordinary had happened. I had evidence of mass murder in my jacket, a killer hunting me, and a debt to a dead man who had trusted me with his final mission. I took out my phone and dialed 911. The operator answered on the second ring, her voice professional and calm. 911, what's your emergency? And I realized I had no idea how to explain what had just happened in a way that wouldn't get me dismissed as crazy or drunk. But I had to try. R. Collins had spent 3 years waiting for someone to believe. I couldn't let him down now.
My name is Michael Chen, I said, forcing my voice to steady. I have evidence of arson and murder related to the Grand Hill Hotel fire 3 years ago. I need police protection and I need a detective who will listen to me. There was a pause. I could hear keyboard clicking. Sir, the Grand Hill Hotel fire was investigated and closed as accidental. It wasn't, I interrupted. I have financial documents proving Richard Castellano hired an arsonist, and Castellano just tried to kill me in the hotel 20 minutes ago. He's still there or nearby. Please, I need someone to take this seriously. Another pause, longer this time. Sir, stay on the line. I'm connecting you to Detective Sarah Morrison. She was one of the investigators on the original case. Relief flooded through me. Someone was listening. Someone was taking this seriously. A new voice came on the line. Older, tired, but alert. This is Detective Morrison. Who am I speaking with? I repeated my name and told her everything, starting with the Uber ride request, the documents in room 304, Castellano's appearance, the chase, all of it. I left out the part about R. Collins being a ghost. That wouldn't help my credibility. How did you know to look in room 304? Morrison asked when I finished. I hesitated. I received a tip from someone who claimed to have information about the fire. Who? I don't know their real name, I lied. It was anonymous. They contacted me through the Uber app. It sounded weak even to me, but it was the best I could do.
Mr. Chen, I need you to listen carefully, Morrison said. If even half of what you're telling me is true, you're in serious danger. Where are you right now? I gave her the address of the diner. Stay there. Stay in public view, preferably inside where there are witnesses. I'm sending 2 patrol units to your location right now, and I'm coming myself. Do not leave. Do not talk to anyone you don't know. And if you see Richard Castellano or anyone suspicious, call 911 immediately. Do you understand? Yes. Good. I'll be there in 15 minutes. The line went dead. I sat in my car for another moment, then grabbed the documents and headed into the diner. The bell above the door chimed as I entered, and every head turned to look at me. I must have been a sight, disheveled, covered in soot and ash, wild-eyed and breathing hard. The waitress approached cautiously. Honey, are you all right? I'm fine, I lied. Just had some car trouble. Can I get coffee? And can I sit where I can see the parking lot? She led me to a booth by the window, poured coffee from a pot that looked like it had been sitting on the burner since the Clinton administration, and tactfully didn't ask any more questions. I wrapped my hands around the cup, trying to stop them from shaking, and watched the parking lot for any sign of Castellano. The minutes crawled by. One of the truckers paid his bill and left. The other fell asleep in his booth. A couple came in, young and laughing about something, living their normal lives in their normal world where ghosts didn't exist and rich men didn't hunt you through the night for knowing too much. 12 minutes after I'd hung up with Morrison, 3 police cars pulled into the parking lot, light bars flashing. A woman in her 50s emerged from the lead car, dressed in a blazer and slacks, her gray hair pulled back in a practical bun. She scanned the diner through the window, spotting me, and headed inside. Michael Chen? She asked, stopping at my booth. Detective Morrison? She sat down across from me, her eyes sharp and assessing. You look like you've been through hell. That's accurate, I said. The documents? I pulled them from my jacket and slid them across the table. Morrison put on reading glasses and began examining them, her expression growing darker with each page. These are copies, she said finally, but they're damning, if they're legitimate. They were in room 304 in a mini fridge, exactly where I caught myself. Exactly where my source said they'd be. Morrison studied me for a long moment. There's something you're not telling me about this source. Yes, I admitted, but if I told you, you wouldn't believe me. What matters is the documents are real. You can verify them, can't you? Check the signatures, the account numbers? We can, Morrison agreed. And we will. But, Mr. Chen, I need you to be honest with you. Even with these documents, building a case 3 years after the fact is going to be incredibly difficult. The physical evidence is gone, witnesses have scattered, and if Castellano has been operating under a new identity, finding him is going to be challenging. You don't have to find him, I said. He'll come after me. He knows I have the evidence. He knows I'm talking to the police. He's not just going to disappear and hope for the best. He's going to try to eliminate the threat. Morrison frowned. That's actually a good point, which is why I'm placing you in protective custody. You're going to come with us to the station, and you're going to stay there until we verified these documents and located Castellano. I should have felt relieved, protected, safe, but something felt wrong. I asked suddenly. How did who know what? Castellano. How did he know I'd accepted the ride? He said he was monitoring Uber requests from the hotel, but how? That would require access to Uber's internal systems or some kind of surveillance on the building or... I stopped, my blood running cold. R. Collins told me belief had power, that the universe responded to will and intention. But there was another explanation, a simpler one. What if it wasn't supernatural at all? I said slowly, thinking it through. What if there was someone at Uber feeding him information? Someone he paid off years ago just in case? Morrison's eyes widened. You think he has someone inside Uber? It would explain how he got there so fast, how he knew exactly where to find me. He wasn't tracking me supernaturally, he was tracking me digitally. Morrison pulled out her phone and stepped away from the booth, speaking rapidly to someone. I couldn't hear the full conversation, but I caught fragments. Under warrants for employment records of Uber, financial connections to Castellano, need it yesterday. She returned to the booth. That's actually a brilliant idea.
If we can prove Castellano has someone inside Uber, that gives us conspiracy charges, wire fraud, possibly RICO violations. It significantly expands our case. But I was barely listening, because I'd just realized something else. If Castellano had someone inside Uber, they could track more than just ride requests. They could track my GPS in real time. They could see exactly where I was right now. "We need to leave," I said urgently. "Right now. If he's been tracking me, he knows I'm here. He could be..." The diner's front window exploded. Glass showered across the booth as something crashed through. Not a bullet, but something larger. A brick, wrapped in cloth. It skidded across the table and landed in front of me, and I could see writing on the cloth. Textual re. "The truth dies with you." "Everyone down," Morrison shouted, drawing her weapon. The other officers who had come with her rushed into the diner, guns drawn, scanning for threats. But when I looked out through the shattered window, I saw nothing. Just empty parking lot, my car sitting there where I'd left it, the police vehicles with their lights still flashing. And then I saw it. A figure, standing at the edge of the parking lot, just beyond the pools of light. Too far away to see clearly, but I knew who it was. Castellano. Raised something, a phone, and even from this distance I could see the glow of the screen. He was looking at it, then at me, then back at the screen. Tracking me, confirming my location. Then he turned and walked away, disappearing into the darkness between buildings. "He's gone," I said. "Units, pursue on foot, right male, 60s headed north from the diner. Consider armed and dangerous." 2 officers ran out, heading in the direction Castellano had gone, but I knew they wouldn't find him. He had led them here, like a shepherd leading sheep, made his point, and withdrawn. He was telling me that he could get to me anywhere, anytime. That no amount of police protection would save me, unless I could get to him first. "Detective," I said, "I have an idea, but you're really not going to like it."
20 minutes later, I was back in my car, driving toward the Riverside District, seemingly alone. But I wasn't alone. Detective Morrison and 4 other officers were following at a distance in unmarked vehicles, tracking my location through my phone. We'd set a trap, using me as bait. The plan was simple, maybe too simple. If Castellano was tracking me through Uber, he'd see me driving to my apartment. He'd assume I was running, trying to hide, going to ground in familiar territory. And he'd come for me there, where he can make my death look like a home invasion or robbery gone wrong. Except we'd be waiting for him. I hated this plan. Every fiber of my being screamed that I was an idiot for volunteering to be bait. But Morrison had been right when she said we needed to draw him out. With his resources, his connections, his ability to create new identities, Castellano could disappear again if we gave him time. We needed to catch him tonight, while he was focused on eliminating the threat I represented. My apartment building came into view, a 5-story brick structure that had been elegant once, maybe 70 years ago, but had since declined into affordable. The lobby door lock was broken more often than it worked. The elevator made concerning noises. Half the mailboxes had been forced open at some point. It was the kind of place where neighbors minded their own business, where strange sounds in the night went uninvestigated. Perfect for murder. I parked in my usual spot and headed inside, very aware that I might be watched. The lobby was empty, fluorescent lights flickering. I took the stairs to the 3rd floor. The elevator was too risky, too enclosed, and walked down the hallway to apartment 3C. My hands shook as I unlocked the door. I'd lived here for 8 months since the divorce, and I'd never really made it feel like home. Just a place to sleep between shifts, to shower, to eat microwave meals while watching streaming shows I'd forget immediately afterward. The furniture was minimal. A couch I'd bought secondhand, a coffee table, a TV on a stand. The bedroom held a mattress on the floor and a dresser. That was it. The accumulated possessions of 38 years that mattered enough to keep. Detective Morrison's voice came through the earbud I was wearing. "We're in position, 2 units covering the exits, 2 of us in the stairwell 1 floor down." "You good?" "Define good," I muttered. "Stay alert. If he comes, don't try to be a hero. Just stay alive long enough for us to get there." Inspiring advice. I left the lights off but turned on the TV, making it look like I was home, settling in, letting my guard down. Then I positioned myself against the wall beside the door, out of the sightline from the peephole, and waited. Minutes passed. 10, 20, 30.
Maybe he wasn't coming. Maybe he'd seen through the trap. Maybe... The sound of footsteps in the hallway, careful and measured. They stopped outside my door. A long pause. Then, incredibly, a knock. "Michael!" Castellano's voice, calm and reasonable, like we were neighbors borrowing sugar. "I know you're in there. I know the police are nearby, but I'm not here to hurt you. I'm here to make a deal." I didn't respond, barely dared to breathe. "Those documents you found," Castellano continued. "They're copies, Michael. Useless in court, without originals, without chain of custody, without corroboration. Any lawyer could get them thrown out. But you know what? I don't even care about them anymore. Let them investigate. They'll find nothing. I've covered my tracks too well." He was stalling, I realized, buying time for something. "What I care about is you," Castellano said. "You're the story, the Uber driver who found evidence of a conspiracy. That's interesting. That's the kind of thing that gets media attention, that makes people start digging. And I can't have that. So here's my offer. $1 million. Cash. Offshore account. You walk away, forget this ever happened, and live the rest of your life wealthy enough to never work another day." Through the earbud, Morrison's voice came. "Keep him talking. We're moving in." "Why would I trust you?" I called through the door. "Because you're smart enough to know that money is more reliable than justice. Justice is uncertain, slow, often disappointing. But money is real. Money solves problems. Your debt, your failed career, your divorce, all just symptoms of not having enough money. I'm offering you the cure." He was right about one thing. Money would solve a lot of my problems, but it wouldn't let me sleep at night. It wouldn't bring back the 15 people who died. It wouldn't give R. Collins the justice he had spent 3 years waiting for. "No deal," I said. A long silence. Then, "I thought you might say that, which is why I brought insurance." Something heavy hit my door. Once, twice, a battering ram or sledgehammer. The frame splintered, the door crashed inward. But Castellano didn't enter. Instead, something else came through the doorway. Smoke. Thick, gray-white smoke billowing into my apartment like a living thing. And with it came the smell. Gasoline, accelerant, fire. He'd set the building on fire. "You want to know what it's like?" Castellano's voice came from somewhere in the smoke-filled hallway. "Let me show you." I couldn't breathe. I couldn't see. The smoke alarm in my apartment shrieked to life, joined by others up and down the hallway. I dropped to the floor where the air was slightly clearer and started crawling toward the window. Behind me, I heard Morrison and the other officers storming up the stairs. I heard shouting. I heard what might have been gunshots, but it was all distant, muffled by the smoke and the pounding of my heart and the primal panic of being trapped in fire. I reached the window and threw it open. Cold air rushed in, and for a moment I could breathe. But the fresh oxygen also fed the fire, and I heard it roar to life somewhere behind me, hungry and growing. The fire escape. My building had one, an old iron structure that I never even tested. I climbed through the window onto the metal platform, and it groaned under my weight but held. I started descending as fast as I dared, the metal stairs vibrating with each step. Above me, smoke was pouring from windows. Below me, people were emerging from the building, some in pajamas, carrying pets or children, evacuating into the street. I'd done this. By bringing this confrontation to my building, I'd put all these people in danger. I reached the ground and ran toward Morrison, who was coordinating the response, shouting into her radio. "Fire department is en route. ETA 3 minutes. Evacuate the building. Get everyone back."
"Castellano?" I gasped. "Got away in the confusion," Morrison said grimly. "He had an exit strategy, set the fire as a distraction and slipped out while we were trying to contain it. I looked up at my building, flames now visible in several windows, the fire spreading faster than seemed possible. Professional job. Castellano had done this before, knew exactly how to make a building burn. And he'd gotten away again. "No," I said. "No, this can't be how it ends." "Michael," Morrison started, but I was already moving, already pulling out my phone, already opening the Uber app. If Castellano was monitoring it, if he had someone inside Uber tracking my requests, then I could use that. I could send him a message. I requested a ride. Pickup location, my burning apartment building. Destination, Grand Hill Hotel. "What are you doing?" Morrison demanded. "Finishing this," I said. "He'll see the request. He'll know I'm going back to the hotel, and he'll go there too because he can't resist. The evidence started there, so it needs to end there. He's obsessive enough to appreciate the symmetry." "That's insane. You're not bait anymore, Michael. The operation is over." It's not over until he's caught, I said. And he won't be caught by normal means. You said it yourself. He has too many resources, too many connections. But he has one weakness, his ego. He needs to win completely, definitively. He needs to burn every bridge, quite literally. So let's give him what he wants. Morrison stared at me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. You're right. God help me, you're right. But this time we do it right. Full SWAT team, containment, no chances. You're not going in there alone. Yes, I am, I said. A car was already approaching. My Uber had been accepted, but not by another driver. By me. I'd requested my own car as the ride, using the complicated driver-passenger dual interface that the app technically allowed. I was going to drive myself to the final confrontation. Michael, Morrison called as I headed for my car. I turned back. Don't die, she said. I hate paperwork. I almost smiled. I'll do my best. As I drove toward Grand Hill Hotel for the second time that night, I realized that I'd stopped being afraid. Fear required believing you had something to lose, and I'd already lost everything that mattered. Now I was just a man with a debt to pay, driving toward a haunted hotel where the dead waited for justice.
The Grand Hill Hotel looked different now, in the gray, pre-dawn light. Less ominous, more sad. Just a building that had died badly, waiting for someone to either restore it or tear it down. I parked in the same spot I had hours earlier, when this had all begun, when I had accepted a ride request from a dead man and set everything in motion. The fence gap was still there, the service entrance still open. I walked through both, my footsteps echoing in the silence. Behind me, I knew Morrison's team was moving into position, surrounding the building, preparing for Castellano's arrival. But inside the hotel, I was alone. Or not quite alone. You came back, R. Collins's voice said from the shadows. I turned and saw him, clearer than ever before, almost solid. He looked tired, if ghosts could look tired, but also hopeful. I'm finishing what we started, I said. The police have the documents, they're building a case, but Castellano's coming here to stop me, to stop us. I know, R. Collins said. I can feel him. He's close. Why here? I asked. Why does this place matter so much to him? Because this is where his crime happened, where he crossed the line from white-collar criminal to mass murderer. He needs to control this space, own it, make sure no evidence remains. It's psychological. The murderer returning to the scene of the crime, not from guilt, but from possessiveness. And you? I asked. Why are you still here? Why haven't you moved on? Because the truth hasn't been delivered yet, he said, simply. I'm anchored by unfinished business. When Castellano was caught, when the world knows what he did, I can let go, but not before. Footsteps on the floor above us. Slow, confident footsteps. He's here, I whispered. Third floor, R. Collins confirmed. Room 304. Where else would he go? We moved through the building together, ghosts and driver, ascending the damaged stairwell for the second time. The dawn light was starting to filter through the broken windows, casting long shadows that danced and shifted. Everything felt suspended, held in the moment before sunrise, between night and day, darkness and light. Room 304's door still hung open from when Castellano had smashed it earlier. I stepped through, and there he was, standing by the window where I'd jumped, looking out at the city. I knew you'd come, he said without turning. You're predictable, Michael. Heroic types always are. You think if you confront me here, somehow that makes this matter more, makes it mean something. It already means something. 15 people died here. Their lives matter. Their families deserve answers. Sentiment. Castellano dismissed, turning to face me. He had the gun again, held loosely at his side. The world doesn't run on sentiment. It runs on power, money, and the willingness to do what others won't. You're wrong, R. Collins said, stepping forward.
He couldn't see or hear him, but I could. The world runs on millions of small choices by ordinary people. People who choose truth over lies, courage over cowardice, justice over convenience. You think you're powerful, but you're not. You're just afraid. I repeated his words aloud, speaking for him. Castellano's expression flickered. Uncertainty, then anger. Who told you that? Your mysterious source? Is that who you're talking to? His name was Robert Collins. He was a financial auditor. He had a wife and 2 kids. He liked jazz music and photography. He was staying in this room when you murdered him, along with 15 other people. And he's been waiting 3 years for someone to hold you accountable. He's dead, Castellano said flatly. Whatever you think you're hearing, it's just your imagination. Then why are you here? I challenged. If it's just my imagination, why did you come? Why does this place still have power over you? Castellano raised the gun, pointing it directly at my chest. Because I need to make sure all the loose ends are tied up, including you. The police are surrounding the building. You can't escape. Maybe, Castellano agreed, but I can take you with me. And if I'm going to pay for my crime, at least I'll have the satisfaction of knowing the evidence dies too. He started to squeeze the trigger, and R. Collins moved. He didn't just drift or float. He surged forward with purpose, with all the force of 3 years of waiting, of undelivered justice, of truth seeking its moment. He passed through me, and I felt it, a rush of cold, of memory, of someone else's life flashing through my consciousness. And then he hit Castellano. The gun went off, but the bullet went wide, shattering what remained of the mirror on the far wall. Castellano staggered, looking around wildly, feeling the presence even if he couldn't see it. What? He started to say. The floor beneath him groaned. The structural damage I'd noticed earlier, that compromised boards and stress fractures, finally gave way. With a sound like a thunderclap, a section of floor collapsed and Castellano fell through. He didn't fall far, just 10 feet to the floor below. But I heard the impact, heard his scream of pain. The gun clattered away somewhere in the darkness. "Morrison!" I shouted. "Third floor! Suspect down! Need medical!" Footsteps pounded up the stairs. Morrison and her team appeared, weapons drawn, moving with practiced efficiency. They secured Castellano, who was conscious but injured, his leg bent at a wrong angle, and read his rights. I stood there, watching, feeling strangely empty. It was over. Actually over. The man who'd murdered 15 people was in custody. The evidence would be processed. Justice, slow and imperfect, but real, would follow its course. "Michael," R. Collins said quietly. I turned. He was fading now, becoming transparent, the morning light visible through his form. "Thank you," he said, "for believing, for seeing, for delivering the truth. I don't understand what you were. Ghost, memory, manifestation of guilt? I don't know what was real." "Does it matter?" he asked, echoing what he'd said before. "You felt something was wrong. You chose to act. That's all truth ever requires. Someone willing to see it and speak it. What happens now? For you?"
He smiled, and for the first time it was a peaceful expression. "Now I go wherever it is we go. Now I find out if my wife and kids are waiting, or if there's just peace, or something else entirely. Whatever it is, I'm ready." "Tell them," I said, "about what happened here. Make sure everyone knows their lives mattered." "I will," R. Collins promised. "And Michael, your life matters too. Don't forget that." He faded completely then, dissolving into the morning light,
and I was alone in room 304 with just the sounds of police radios and Morrison coordinating the scene. She approached me, her expression carefully neutral. "You all right?" "I think so," I said. "Did we get him? Is it enough?" "We got him," Morrison confirmed. "And yes, between the documents, his appearance at your apartment building, the fire, and the attack here, we have more than enough. He's going away for the rest of his life." I nodded, feeling the weight of the night finally settling on me. The exhaustion, the fear, the impossibility of what I'd experienced. "For the record," Morrison said quietly, "I don't know what happened here. I don't know how you knew where to find that evidence, or how you knew Castellano would come. But I've been a cop for 23 years, and I've learned that sometimes things happen that don't fit in the official report. So I'm just going to say that you acted on an anonymous tip and leave it at that." "Thank you," I said. "Don't thank me. You did something incredibly brave and incredibly stupid. Next time you have evidence of murder, just bring it to the police instead of playing detective." "Next time?" Morrison smiled. "With your luck, yeah, there'll probably be a next time." 3 weeks later, I stood outside the Grand Hill Hotel in the afternoon sunshine. The yellow police tape had been removed, replaced by construction fencing. The city had finally approved demolition. The building was too damaged, too expensive to restore. By the end of the month, it would be rubble. Richard Castellano had been formally charged with 15 counts of second-degree murder, arson, attempted murder, and a dozen other crimes. His trial was scheduled for the following year. The story had made national news. "Insurance fraud leads to hotel fire massacre," the headline screamed. The families of the victims were finally getting answers. Closure. Justice. I'd quit driving Uber. The night with R. Collins was my last ride. Instead, I'd taken a job with a victim advocacy nonprofit, helping families navigate the criminal justice system. The pay was terrible, but it mattered. It meant something. My phone buzzed. A text from Morrison. "Castellano's lawyer just announced he's pleading guilty. No trial. Life without parole. Thought you'd want to know." I smiled. Typed back, "Justice delivered." A breeze picked up, warm and carrying the scent of the city, exhaust and food carts and possibility. I could have sworn I heard something in it, just for a moment. A voice, distant and content, saying one final word. "Thanks." I looked up at the Grand Hill Hotel one last time. Soon it would be gone, erased from the city's skyline. But the people who died there would be remembered. Their stories would live on. And somewhere, I hoped, R. Collins was finally at peace. I got in my car, my personal car now, not a rideshare vehicle, and drove toward the office, toward my new life, toward whatever came next. Behind me, the Grand Hill Hotel stood silent in the afternoon sun, holding its secrets a little while longer. But not forever. Never forever. Truth, I'd learned, has a way of surfacing. Sometimes it needs help, sometimes it needs someone willing to see the impossible and believe anyway. Sometimes it needs an Uber driver working the night shift, accepting one last ride, delivering one last passenger to their final destination. Sometimes truth just needs someone who's lost enough to have nothing left to lose and everything to gain by choosing courage over fear. I'd been that person. And in being that person, I'd found something I thought I'd lost forever. Purpose. The traffic light ahead turned green, and I drove forward into the rest of my life, carrying with me the memory of a ghost who'd trusted me with the truth, and the knowledge that sometimes the impossible is just what's real waiting to be seen.
Up next, 2 more incredible stories are waiting for you right on your screen. If you enjoyed this one, you won't want to miss these. Just click to watch and don't forget to subscribe.